Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Good morning. Welcome to Mesa County Compass. We have with us today Janet Rowland and Brett Goff. Janet Rowland as Mesa County Commissioner and Brett as the county assessor.
The beloved assessor.
The beloved assessor.
Yeah, we gotta get that word straight.
Thanks for the plug.
Yes.
Anyway, we think that this might be quite a nice interview, so bear with us. We'll get through and ask some pertinent questions today. But first of all, I'm going to start off with Janet. Would you give us a little bit about yourself, and then Brent, if you would do the same,
okay.
We can start it off rolling that way.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm currently County Commissioner. I worked for the Department of Human Services for about 10 years before I ran for Commissioner initially in 2004, and I served 2 terms. I was out 2 terms and ran the CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates, working with kids in foster care, and then was reelected in 2020.
Nice.
Okay, nice. Okay, Brent.
Okay, I'm the county assessor, and this is my first term. I've been in office 11 months, 14 days, and 3 hours. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been quite a year. And prior to that, I was deputy assessor in the office. And in another life, it seems, I was a fee appraiser. I had my own appraisal business in Lakewood. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So you've had some real background on yours.
I have.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
All right.
And Janet has served on a number of boards, I know, and really involved in the community, even when she wasn't running for public office. And so just a real heart for the community. So one of the things that was real interesting to us is HH didn't pass. And I know that there were several, and I'm going to say of a more liberal ilk, that said, oh no, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Can you tell us what HH was, why they were so afraid if it didn't pass that the sky would fall?
For the longest time, I thought I must be dense. I don't quite get the problem that's trying to be solved. And then I asked Brett, am I getting this right or not? And he said, no, you've got it right. I never understood why there was this concern about, property values went up 40%. Mm-hmm. Well, Tabor has a revenue cap. So when our revenue grows more than population plus inflation,
right,
we refund that money back to the taxpayers. Mm-hmm. Now, Mesa County is one of only 13 counties who are still under Tabor in the part of the revenue. The rest of them have debruced. But for Mesa County, when we go up beyond population plus inflation, we refund it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't quite understand the problem. Even in the counties and cities that have debruced, doesn't mean they have to keep all the money. If they grow by 40%, they can still choose to lower it by 40%. There's nothing stopping them. And then you would sometimes hear, well, what about the who's going to backfill the lost revenue if they drop their property tax below? Well, if you suddenly get 40% more than you were planning and you don't need it, and you give it back, where's the hole to be filled? You're still whole with where you were before. I asked Brett again, am I crazy? What am I missing? And he said, no, that's exactly it. There is no problem to solve. Local governments have the ability to lower their mill levy temporarily to reduce the cost of property tax on taxpayers, period.
And is that what we're doing? Is that what the decision has been?
Well, so we have several options Tabor is not specific on how you refund the money.
Right.
But historically, Mesa County has always done a temporary mill levy reduction, and then the taxpayers see that on their tax bill. Mm-hmm. Last year, because a lot of the tax surplus came from sales tax, and people who don't own property don't get the benefit of that refund, we did checks to everybody so that everybody could, whether they owned property or not. But we also gave out about $13 million, so it was about $122 a person. This last year, it's only going to be about $500,000 to refund, so we're probably not going to want to write a check for $2 a piece.
Right,
With the property tax, it certainly would be a lot more, and it seems to make sense that it would go back by way of the property tax, since that's what's driving but we can do it anyway. We haven't had a chance to talk, but my guess is that's how we'll do it.
It'll go back to the property tax.
Yeah.
And just a slight reduction. So they were so worried that our property taxes were going to increase so much, and you're saying that it's a temporary solution to drop the mill levy.
It's that we can lower do a temporary reduction of the mill levy. Yes.
Okay, and why is it only temporary if the problem with the evaluation is continuing to go up? Because when we had Cindy in, she was saying that the average price for a home now is $400,000, which is pretty much unaffordable to people starting out, and then their taxes are going to be very high too. So, what long term can we do to help with that, so that, because you don't have more money just because your property is worth more, especially if you bought it when it was worth less, you're just paying more tax.
It's just the mechanism we use is a temporary mill reduction, mill levy decrease, and it can be done every year. If it continues on, it can be done every year. But we did it in the past because one year property values might go up, or it's not even the property values that could go up, but just the revenue that we received went up, and we have to find a way to give it back. So we temporarily reduce the mill levy, but then when property taxes go back down again, it might go up. There's some flexibility. It's just simply a tool to refund the funding, the taxes.
Perfect. So then why did they need the special legislative session? What was that
That's a good
all
question.
about? Because that was a...
Can I just take a stab
you can
at
do whatever
that?
you want.
I got to tell you, all three commissioners, I got to hand it to them on the HH. They were vocal about how bad of an idea that was. And it's hard to get all three commissioners on the same page.
That's true.
But I got to give them some props for that piece. The governor called that special session, and it was kind of a lopsided show, if you will. I was in communication with Senator Janice Rich the whole time.
Right.
She must have sent me like at least 10 texts during the middle of the debate. And the one side of the legislature, Front Range dominated, was calling the ball. They were calling all the shots and marginalizing the people from over here from having a say so. The product of that was HH light.
Yeah.
And so the special session, the majority called it, and we got an HH light in this special bill called Senate Bill 23B001, and that gives exemptions and credits, but not enough to offset that 40% that Janet is talking about. It's not nearly enough. So next month, folks are going to get a tax bill that's going to be pretty heavy.
They're going to be hollering.
It wasn't enough this Senate or this special session. So
Explain again a little bit more about this special session and how that was directed by Polis and the people, Governor Polis and the people on the other side of the mountain and the majority party, and what impact that has on a little bit more explanation.
okay.
Obviously, I'm not getting it.
And I want Commissioner Rowland to jump in if I say something stupid here.
Okay.
But my take on it is it's really hard to simplify what was going on, because the initial enabling legislation that put HH on the ballot was 60 pages of different minutia.
Okay.
And what they should have done is just hit the easy button and lowered all the assessment rates by 40%. Bam, done. So when the market value bubbles
Right.
and real estate values bubble like we saw, it was unprecedented. Around the state, the values went up 40%.
Right.
So why not just do the math and lower the assessment rates 40% and call it good? That's too easy, because you can't hand out favors and punish people.
Oh,
You hand out favors to the economic activities that you like, and then you punish the people like oil and gas that are, you got oil and gas with an 87.5% assessment rate. Renewable energy, if you have a solar on your house, it's free. There's no tax. So there's winners and losers being picked.
Boy, it looks to me like there's quite a discrepancy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so the assessment rates can be used as a political engine to drive behavior that they want to incentivize or punish. And that's why it's really hard to explain, but in a nutshell, they didn't want to do the easy right thing that would have made a flat reduction. They wanted to be progressive and add a exemption to just for the houses, an exemption just for the commercial, nothing for industrial, nothing for vacant land, and nothing for oil and gas. Let them keep the same high tax burden.
Totally convoluted.
And so
Just-
it's hard to explain, but I think in a nutshell, they wanted to pick winners and losers. And I think the most devious part of that HH was the robbing from Tabor to fund it. They were going to steal from Tabor to fund it, and
Fund special interests in there.
I thought that was just wrong.
Let me throw something out here real quick. Can you give, either one of you, give a really brief explanation of Tabor? For those, there are those out there that really don't understand it, and I know it's a little difficult to understand as well, but if you could give us just a brief overview.
Well, nobody is the Tabor expert or the Tabor police. There's no person in state government that polices Tabor. I think, and add on if you think I'm missing anything, there's a revenue cap for growth. There's a property tax mill levy cap in Tabor. There's restrictions on how we have to value property. For instance, a house, we can only use a market approach. That's all under Tabor. A big apartment complex, we can't use a income approach or cost approach. So there's all different facets of Tabor. They restrict the growth of government. They restrict in Tabor the mill levy. There's restrictions on the appraisal technique. So it's been around since 1990, I think.
1992.
1992. And
most people thought that was a way to keep government accountable when they passed that.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? Or
I think what most people thought is what they saw in the ballot language right up front is that you can't raise our taxes without a vote of the people. The state, local governments can't do that. That is Tabor.
right.
Then there was a lot of these other things put in there that complicated it, like the revenue cap. When I voted for Tabor, I thought I was voting that they can't raise my tax, give me a new tax without me voting on it. I had no idea there would be these convoluted revenue caps that could cause a ratchet down effect that Mesa County is experiencing right now. But in a nutshell, it was to control the growth of government.
Well, that's what I originally thought it was, and then there was all this other that came in that made me question my own thoughts about it. So thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate that. So with that being said, excuse me, something that will appear on the ballot in 2024 is a measure that will cap our property taxes at 4%. I need your opinion on that, if you would, please.
That's Initiative 50, I believe. There's 9 different initiatives that are floating out there. Some of them would be a property tax cap like this, Initiative 50, 4%. I'm all for it as long as the treasurer has to calculate it. No. In all seriousness, you think about what has to be done for that initiative is it would constrain not only the value, but it would constrain the assessment rate and constrain all the mill levies. So to cap it at 4% is a simple math calculation. You take last year's value times 1.04, and there's your next year's value. It can't exceed that. So I honestly think that it would be a treasurer function to constrain all 3. Because otherwise you have the commissioners and the special districts thinking about how to constrain just the mill levy. You have the assessor thinking about how to constrain the actual value, and the legislature thinking about how to constrain the assessment rate. Why not just constrain it at the end administratively the treasurer, not the assessor, does the 4% and calls it good. Then the next question from that would be, what happens to the special districts that are looking for their funds? They would probably have the fire chief for Clifton is going to want money to operate. So he's probably looking at a 4% cap on their end. I don't know. Are you familiar with that
and
one, Janet?
I think you bring up a good point. The special districts are a big piece of our overall taxes that we pay.
Right.
The county is a small portion of it.
Yeah.
In fact, the county, last time I looked, was right at just below 12 mills, and that's the same for the Clifton Fire District. So I
Wow.
actually pay a little bit more to Clifton Fire than I do to Mesa County when I pay my property taxes.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be mindful of some of these very small districts who don't have a lot of money. However, if there is a 40% increase in property values, I don't think any of those special districts need to increase their budget by 40%. All of them could do a temporary mill levy decrease, and the problem would be solved with the taxes.
So is that your choice to do that, or is that their choice to say,
Every special district has their own board, and we
Okay.
have 24 of them in Mesa County. And so those boards will be deciding over the next few months what they want to do, just like the commissioners will and city council.
Just out of curiosity, do you ever have a group roundtable? Wouldn't that be fun?
On property tax? That's a great question about that initiative. There's other initiatives hanging out there that don't have enough signatures yet. And I'm looking at them. As a matter of fact, I brought my law seminar book.
oh,
Okay.
It outlines 9 different initiatives that might hit the ballot with enough signatures.
Oh, what is the
Wow.
likelihood of that happening?
I don't know. I know they have to get a certain number of signatures from each
Right, from each
Senate
area.
district,
yeah.
is it?
I believe so.
So I don't know.
And those could conflict with each other too.
They could. That's what I've heard is so you get the 4% on the ballot. There's another competing one that guarantees a certain amount of money to the special districts. So how all that would work, I'm not a constitutional expert,
Right.
but there might be some fireworks.
Might be. Very likely. Very likely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cody Davis was recently appointed to the Commission of Property Tax by Governor Polis. What does he hope to accomplish for Mesa County, and what will that impact be?
That's a good question. I think you should have him in as a guest to talk about it. It's a panel designed to look at the issues around property tax. He certainly is in the minority in terms of a conservative perspective. So how much he'll be able to accomplish, I don't know. But I am thankful we do at least have a voice of reason. They haven't met yet. I believe their first meeting is next Wednesday. So there's a lot to find out in terms of what their charter will be and what they hope to accomplish.
Well, we'll get him in here after he's had that first break-in
Yeah.
session
Right.
and see what he feels about it at that time.
I want to tease him a little bit about this tax commission because I find it interesting that only one assessor in the whole state has been appointed, and there's 5 county commissioners to talk about tax policy, property tax. So I thought that should have been reversed.
I would not disagree.
I would
Yeah.
tease him about that, but I think I know I'm gonna give him my unfettered opinion, and I know Commissioner Rowland will all give him great ideas and give him some ammunition.
That's, I think it's what he will need.
Yeah.
right.
Is a lot of good ammunition. When you go and broach things on the eastern slope from the western slope, it's just a whole new ball game.
Right.
Well, the population has so much, and they have different needs, and they have different interests and different values and
That
priorities.
mountain is a
Yeah.
huge barrier.
Yeah, and the philosophy is
Right.
different over here. Most of us feel that property tax should be used to fund government. That's it. It shouldn't be used to pick winners and losers and drive economics and punish bad behavior that is against climate change and
Right.
incentivize other perceived good social. I should just shut up.
But I guess what we're wondering though is, what can we do as a county over here to protect ourselves? Because there was some protection, I thought, during COVID with the ideas of opening up our businesses, at least partially, even with Governor Polis saying we want to have more of a shutdown, more control, but you all seem to be able to help us some. Is there anything to push back on that we can do over here?
I mean, to a degree, we can do some things, but counties in particular are an arm of the state. So the only authority a county have is what the state has already given us through the Constitution or laws. And so we're very limited. You can be a home rule county. There are a few things you could have a little more control over, but at the end of the day, the state calls the shots with the counties. So,
Yeah. And we're bowling within the rails that is CRS 39 with all the property tax laws that are in there. I'll give you one example out of that. The state gives the assessor a range of value we have to value all the properties within 95% of the incoming sale prices. So there's a range between 95 and 105%. And so as the assessor, I chose to hit like a 98%. And if you fail to hit 95%, the state takes over my office.
Oh, no.
But if you hit your foot on the gas pedal too hard and appraise things at 100%, you get a bunch of appeals, like Douglas County had this year.
Okay.
So I'm not picking on them because it's good appraisal, but their assessor hit 100% on the median, and they had 32,000 appeals. Right?
Whoa.
Wow.
And 1 out of every 4 houses in Douglas County filed an appeal. Well, the commissioners there decided to make the choice to back off that median. So my thought is, let's give the assessor a wider median, like 90 to 110. 90 to 110 is the International Association of Assessing Officers standard. In Colorado, it's tighter than that. And so what that would give me is a little bit more wiggle room not to overvalue people. Because we don't see all the houses. We don't go inside of them.
Right.
We don't know that there's broadcast studios and houses.
It's true. I know.
like that.
I mean, really, Tucker Carlson came and asked me, what would you do if you were starting your own channel? I said, you know what? Let me help.
Well, so that's the other thing is we more and more we're appraising uses instead of sticks and bricks, and it's so we're giving breaks to different people instead of appraising property. And I'm an appraiser, and I would just as soon value the property and not even have an assessment rate. Just make everybody pay the same. But that's way above my pay grade.
Right. You're still under the control of the state.
Yeah.
They won't let you do that.
Yeah.
And I think that when people understand what you're doing and you seem more human, and it's not like we're out to get you and look at us and we want more money for the government so that we can waste it however we want, that people are more willing, maybe not able, but they're more willing to pay what you're asking. And saying, oh, I understand this is not strictly your decision. You're operating within this. And
Sure.
and the assessor's office is saying what the value of a home is. And it's based on sales comparables. So your house is worth that because you could sell it for that.
Exactly,
Right? So
right.
he's not the bad guy because our homes are worth more. It's just now we need to lower the mill levy so we don't double our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you said we're going to see a significant increase. What do you think that increase is going to be for the average home? Or can you do it that way?
We're still calculating that. I think that January 24th, we'll all get our tax bills. It won't be enough to offset that 40% market value increase. I know that. I should have ran like a scenario for your average house for you, but I don't have that with me.
Okay.
It might take some math to figure that out.
And we just want the end product. We do not want to go through the calculation.
Right? You
Yes, none
don't?
of us do.
No. We just want the paper and we want a pretty chart.
Yeah.
I think the one thing to keep in mind is that will change after about 18 months to 2 years too.
Yeah.
You know, it'll either go up or it'll go down, and notoriously it has gone down here in the valley. We have our boom and bust cycles. So being an ex-realtor, that's I know how that works.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
You had a question on the Palisade.
Oh, I did have a question. It's kind of off the subject, but the town of Palisade is, I don't know whether in negotiation or whether it has become cast in stone, but looking at joining up with, well, let's go back a little bit. They have a problem with a failed septic system or sewer system, sewer collection system. And they're looking now to join up with Clifton Sanitation via a pipeline that's going to go through several properties in the valley. I hear a lot of unrest and discourse about that because it was never actually brought to the vote of a people. What do you know about that?
I'm not sure what their decisions are, but typically you don't have to go to a vote of the people to install a sewer system. And we have sewer pipes underneath lots of properties all over the valley. But they have a failure, they have an issue they have to resolve. I think it's a great partnership to work with Clifton Sanitation. It makes sense.
Does it? Because
than
Clifton's
building their own.
growing, Palisade is growing. Wouldn't it be better that they take those monies and put it into Palisade and have their own system so they don't have to rely on Clifton? Because at some time down the road, that's going to be obsolete as well. So take the monies and put it in their own expansion. That's my thought.
Yeah, and I don't have the dollars, but I was told it's significantly more costly to build their own system. And
But for
Clifton
how long?
just built
Over
a new one.
a period of
I
time?
don't see Palisade growing much. They tend to be a no-growth community, so I'm
Well,
not
right
seeing a lot
now,
of
but
growth
it's
there.
inevitable.
Maybe.
It's inevitable
I
that they'll
live out
start
there.
putting apartment complexes and everything, just like this town is doing.
Yeah, you have the buffer zone too, so that's a lot of area that can't be developed. And my understanding is that's where they were putting the pipeline system under, is the buffer zone, so that you couldn't have development there anyway.
Right. So the buffer zone being, and I understand what it is, but please explain to our public
Yes.
exactly what the buffer zone is and how long does that remain firm? How long is that in play for?
So we have a buffer zone between Grand Junction and Palisade, and another one between Grand Junction and Fruita. And the intent years ago was to stop the annexation wars between the municipalities, and some also wanted to have some kind of open space. So you can still develop your property in the buffer zone to the same level of density you already have. But and I'm not sure about the one in Palisade. I know the one by Fruita, you can't tap into sewer, so it would have to be on septic. So you're very limited. You
Okay.
can't build multifamily apartments because you
In
couldn't
the
do
buffer
that.
zone.
Right.
Okay.
Right. How long it lasts right now, there's no end date to it, but those types of agreements could always be, changed or renewed.
It
or
has to be
whatever.
brought to the people in order to do that, though. Is
Not
that
to
correct?
the people, it would be to the local governments. So it would be between those municipalities and their boards and
Okay.
councils.
Very interesting. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that answers a few questions there, because the people always say, well, we have a right to vote, we have a right to vote, and in this case it doesn't look like it.
No, you vote for your elected officials, and then they take care of the business.
So you better be very careful who you vote
That's
for.
right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Always.
Make sure they're knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you have answered my questions really well,
Great.
and I
Thanks for
appreciate your
having
time.
us.
But the biggest thing is, how can people feel like they're more involved? We always feel like that. People don't know. As you will see in the paper, sometimes I see people just saying, well, this is what they're doing in this, and it's not actually true. What is the best way for a person to know that something that's important to them is on the agenda? Because sometimes we go, well, when did they do that? Or why didn't we know? And it's not, if they understood the issue and knew all of the facts, they would necessarily be opposed. But because they're not informed and you just spend your time listening to rumors, that you...
They feel like they were blindsided.
Right,
Yes.
right.
So
What's the
have
best way?
We have a thing called the Sunshine List in Colorado. People can sign up for it, and you will be emailed every week our schedule, the meetings that we have with those agendas, and the agenda packets. So for a typical public hearing, you're going to have anywhere from 600 to 1,400 pages
Oh my
of
gosh.
information. So you can drill down as far as you want, or you can just glance at the agenda and see the items that are going to be covered. For our public hearings, you can watch online via Zoom from your home, or you can come down to the hearings, and you can also give comment on things that we're voting on. So there is no reason for anybody to be uninformed about what the county or the city is doing. We all have these sunshine lists, we all have our agendas posted, and we all broadcast live on Zoom.
That sounds fair.
Perfect.
Well, we appreciate your time, and you've been listening to Mesa County Compass. This is the truth as we see it, and you decide.